When I first walked into Ms. Delacroix's office, my heart was pounding like I was about to propose marriage instead of ask for a raise. I'd practiced what I was going to say all night standing in front of the mirror, trying to seem confident. I even Googled how to ask your intimidating boss for more money. Not that anything online could prepare me for how utterly overwhelming she could be in person. Ms. Delacroix wasn't just the CEO of the company, but she also had this way of looking at people that made you feel like she could see every lie you were about to tell before you even opened your mouth. She had this perfect posture, always dressed in sleek pencil skirts and high heels that clacked with precision across the marble floors. No one crossed her. No one even tried. But I'd been working here for over 2 years. I'd taken on extra projects, helped out my team every time someone quit, and kept things afloat when the department nearly collapsed under a failed software rollout. I deserved a raise. At least, I thought I did. I straightened, ed my tie, and knocked on her frosted glass door. A crisp "come in" answered. I stepped into her office, clutching the folder I'd prepared with all my contributions neatly listed. She didn't look up from her screen. "Matthew," she said without emotion. "Sit." Even her voice was sharp, like cut crystal. I obeyed, suddenly hyper-aware of my breathing. Her eyes flicked toward me. I tried to smile, but it probably looked more like a wince. "Well," she prompted, I've been meaning to talk about my position. The work I've been doing." I began, my voice thinner than I wanted. She finally leaned back and folded her arms. "Let me guess. You think you deserve a raise?" I nodded. "Yes, I've taken on." "Stop." She stood and walked around her desk, circling me like a hawk. "You've done your job. That's what you were hired for. You've met expectations. Not exceeded them. But I've taken on extra." "Do you think I don't know that?" she said sharply. "I've had my eye on you for some time, Matthew. You're diligent. You're obedient. You even dress the part." I blinked. "The part?" She smiled for the first time, and it unsettled me. "Let me be frank. There are many ways to earn more here, and not all of them involve numbers and spreadsheets. I need someone more adaptable. Someone who knows how to follow directions. Someone I can mold." I didn't like the sound of that. "Mold," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded. "You want a raise. I want loyalty, devotion, presentation. You're tidy, quiet, and neat. But I could refine you, make you more presentable, more polished." My eyebrows furrowed. "I don't understand." She walked to a tall cabinet and pulled open a drawer. I couldn't see what was inside, but I heard something metallic click. She turned back to me holding a slim pink folder. "You said you wanted to grow with the company. I'm giving you that chance. But it will require changes. Drastic ones." I stared at the folder she laid before me. Written in glossy cursive on the front were the words, "Executive Assistant Grooming Program." "What is this?" I asked, picking it up. She sat on the edge of her desk, legs crossed elegantly. "An opportunity. I'll increase your salary significantly. You'll receive private mentoring. But you'll have to follow every instruction. No hesitation. No questions." "And what does that include?" Her smirk widened. "Appearance, demeanor, communication, wardrobe." I flipped through the folder and froze. Inside were diagrams of skirts, makeup routines, posture guides, even names of salons. "You want me to," I whispered. "Yes," she said smoothly. "I want you to become someone I can present. Someone who reflects my aesthetic. Someone beautifully efficient." I was speechless. My mind raced. Was this even legal? Ethical? But part of me couldn't ignore the offer. The salary boost alone was more than I'd dreamed. And the way she looked at me like she'd already seen what I could become made my pulse quicken for reasons I didn't fully understand. "Think about it," she said, standing again. "But not too long. The opportunity closes by Friday." With that, she returned to her desk, already dismissing me with her silence. I stood, folder clutched tightly, and walked out of her office like I was leaving an alternate universe. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, folder beside me. Was this a joke? A trap? Or a strange kind of promotion? My life had been routine for years. Safe. Predictable. But deep down, hadn't I always wondered what would happen if someone saw something more in me? The folder's pages whispered as I flipped through them again. Lipstick shades. Feminine handwriting exercises. Even sample names. I laughed nervously. No way, I said aloud. But my fingers didn't stop turning the pages. By morning, I was convinced I'd imagined it all. Maybe it had been a strange dream brought on by anxiety and ambition. Maybe the folder wasn't as bizarre as I remembered. But when I reached for my briefcase, there it was right where I'd left it. Smooth pink cover. Elegant font. My name written on a sticky note in Ms. Delacroix's unmistakable handwriting. Matthew, consider this your new beginning. I nearly dropped it. I didn't bring the folder to work. I shoved it deep in my dresser drawer and tried to forget it. But the entire day, I could feel her watching me. Every time I passed her office, I avoided eye contact. I could feel her presence like static in the air. Then, at 4:57 p.m., I received an email with a subject line that sent my stomach into a nosedive. Your decision. The email was short. One sentence. Report to the third-floor conference room at 5:15 if you've chosen to accept the opportunity. I stared at it. My heart beat faster. I could just leave. Pack my things. Go home. Forget any of this ever happened. Or, I checked my bank account balance on my phone. It wasn't great. I had debts, rent, and no other offers. I'd already been overlooked for promotion twice. Maybe this was my chance. At 5:12, I found myself walking toward the third floor. My palms were sweaty. My brain screamed that I was making a huge mistake. But I couldn't deny a twisted curiosity blooming in my chest. What did she see in me? Why me? Why this? The conference room was empty when I arrived except for her. Ms. Delacroix stood by the window, phone in hand. She didn't look surprised to see me, only pleased. You're 3 minutes early, she said without looking up. I like that. I'm still not sure. She held up a hand. Let's not ruin the moment with doubt. Sit. I obeyed, heart hammering. She approached with a small, black leather box and placed it gently in front of me. This, she said, is the beginning. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were a pair of nude pantyhose, a pale pink name badge that read, Madeline, Executive Secretary, and a delicate gold chain necklace. What is this? I croaked. Her tone was calm but firm. Your transformation begins with small steps. Tonight, you'll take this box home. You'll wear the items privately. Get comfortable with them. Practice introducing yourself as Madeline. Look in the mirror and imagine who you're becoming. I shook my head slowly. This is insane. But you're still here, she said with a knowing smile. Which means part of you is curious. Good. Curiosity leads to obedience. And obedience leads to reward. I don't know how to act like. I gestured helplessly at the badge. She sat across from me, suddenly gentler. That's why I'm offering training. Guidance. This is not about humiliation, Matthew. It's about refinement, precision, beauty. You'll learn poise, voice control, grooming. You'll become the face of my office, my vision. It starts now. I hesitated, then touched the badge again. Madeline, a name that sounded so far from me. And yet, what if someone finds out? I asked. They won't, she said smoothly. Not until you're ready. Your transition will be managed discreetly. Weekly sessions, private wardrobe fittings, salon appointments. I'll control every step. You'll simply follow. And if I say no? Her eyes hardened slightly. Then you remain stagnant, underpaid, invisible. The silence stretched. Then I asked the question I never imagined I'd say. What happens next? She smiled, like a puppeteer watching her strings tighten. Next, you try everything in that box. Tonight. And tomorrow morning, you arrive 10 minutes early. With lip gloss. And a name. I swallowed hard. Madeline, I said softly. Good girl, she whispered. The words echoed in my ears long after I left the room. I didn't sleep. I tried. I really did. I even laid the box on the nightstand like it was some kind of cursed relic, hoping I could pretend it wasn't calling to me. But every time I closed my eyes, I imagined myself wearing the pantyhose, saying the name Madeline, seeing her face light up in approval. At 1:47 a.m., I caved. I opened the box again. Slower this time, reverently. The pantyhose felt impossibly delicate in my hands. I'd never worn anything like them before. Slipping them up my legs felt wrong and thrilling at the same time. My breath hitched. They clung to my skin like a second, silkier version of me. Then came the necklace. The little golden chain shimmered under the bathroom light as I clasped it around my neck. I couldn't explain the way it made me feel. Feminine, elegant, vulnerable. I practiced introducing myself as Madeline. At first, I laughed nervously. Then I stopped laughing. Hi, I'm Madeline. My name is Madeline. Can I help you? I'm Madeline, Ms. Delacroix's executive secretary. I stared at my reflection. My face didn't match the name yet, but I could feel something shifting. A performance awakening. Maybe even a version of myself I'd never met before. I didn't realize how long I stood there until the sun began to rise. And I hadn't even touched the lip gloss. The next morning, I didn't get dressed in my usual slacks and button-up. I stood frozen in front of my closet until I finally pulled out the only pair of neutral-tone dress pants. I had the ones that hugged my hips a little too snugly. I paired them with a pale blue blouse I'd bought on clearance years ago for a Halloween costume. It looked different today. I slipped the necklace back on. It felt like it belonged. I hesitated, then opened the drawer and pulled out the lip gloss she'd tucked in beneath the name badge. A shimmery peach color. My hands trembled as I twisted it open and brushed a thin layer across my lips. It smelled like vanilla and danger. I left for work 10 minutes early. The office was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact as I made my way to the elevator. But just before the doors closed, I heard a familiar voice. Well, someone's glowing this morning. It was Ms. Delacroix, and she had that look. I froze. Her eyes swept over me. Lip gloss. Good. Necklace. Lovely. Blouse. Intriguing. But not quite there. She stepped into the elevator with me, hitting the button for her private floor. You're showing effort, Madeline. But we're going to refine that look, piece by piece. This week will be about softening your walk, your voice, your presence. I opened my mouth to respond, but she simply said, "Shoo, good secretaries don't interrupt." I swallowed hard. Her private office was massive high ceilings, gold-accented furniture, and a view that looked like it belonged in a movie. She motioned for me to sit in the plush chair across from her desk, then pulled out a slim folder marked Phase 1. Inside were documents, training outlines, grooming instructions, and a daily attire plan. Monday through Friday. Each outfit more feminine than the last. Day 1, subtle. Day 2, soft. Day 3, polished. Day 4, elegant. Day 5, unmistakably hers. I looked up at her, panic rising. What happens on day 5? She leaned in, her perfume enveloping me. By day 5, there will be no more Matthew. Only Madeline. And the office will see it too. I gripped the folder tightly. And if I fail? You won't, she said simply. Because you crave this more than you fear it. I hated how true that felt. By mid-morning, I was seated at the new desk just outside Ms. Delacroix's door. The old receptionist, Carlene, had been quietly reassigned to corporate communications. No one dared ask why, or how I had suddenly become the new face of the executive floor. I answered the phone in a slightly higher tone, softened my posture, tried to remember what she'd said about uncrossing my arms. The heels, yes, she made me wear low heels felt like bricks tied to my feet. But the worst part wasn't the discomfort. It was the attention. People stared. Some were subtle. Some weren't. A few women smirked knowingly, and a handful of male coworkers passed by like they didn't recognize me. But everyone sensed something had shifted. Something unspoken and strange. No one dared comment. Not directly. Except for Erica from HR. At 2:17 p.m., she stopped by my desk with a paper coffee cup and a raised eyebrow. "So," she said, dragging the word out as she set the cup down. "I heard you got its promotion." I kept my voice calm. "Executive Secretary. To Ms. Delacroix. That's quite the leap." I nodded, lips barely parting. She thought I had potential. Erica tilted her head. She always sees potential, especially in the quiet ones. There was something behind her smile, curiosity, laced with warning. Like she'd seen this before. I wanted to ask what she meant, but before I could, she leaned closer and whispered, "If you need support, the Employee Wellness Portal has resources. Just in case." And just like that, she vanished. I stared at the untouched coffee, suddenly unsure if I should drink it. By evening, I was exhausted. Not from the tasks, those were easy. Filing, scheduling, organizing lunch deliveries, reminding Ms. Delacroix about her call with the Tokyo office. No, it was the mental effort. The act. The transformation. Each moment I sat behind that desk, I wasn't Matthew. I was Madeline. I moved differently. Spoke differently. Even my thoughts began to change. I found myself worrying about whether my lips were too dry, whether my walk looked confident enough, whether Ms. Delacroix was pleased. That night, alone in my apartment, I took off the heels slowly. Then the necklace. Then, finally, the pantyhose. My legs felt cold without them. I didn't shower. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the lip gloss on the nightstand. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt unfinished. The next morning, an envelope was waiting for me at my desk. It was soft pink. My name, Madeline, written in gold cursive. Inside was a handwritten note. Day 2. Softness begins in the mind. Walk with grace. Speak like honey. And where the skirt I left in the cabinet. See. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. There it was. A gray pencil skirt, perfectly tailored to my size. I held it in my hands, heart racing. Across the floor, a reflection in the glass showed me necklace glinting, blouse slightly sheer, lip gloss faint, but still shimmering. And suddenly I knew. There was no going back. Day 2 turned into day 3. The skirt fit too well. Like it had been tailored by someone who knew every curve I was supposed to have, even if I didn't yet. Ms. Delacroix said nothing when I walked in wearing it. Just gave a satisfied little nod. Then came the emails. One was an invite to the monthly executive image workshop hosted offsite, mandatory for select support staff. The other was from someone named Aubrey, welcoming me to the FemForum Circle, a group I'd never heard of, with a curious tagline. Professional poise, personal perfection. By Friday, my inbox was full of salon appointments. Brow shaping, softening facials, even voice training, all marked as company mandated. I stared at the schedule, stunned. Then I made the mistake of asking. I knocked timidly on Ms. Delacroix's door. Is all this really necessary? She didn't even look up from her computer. Madeline, excellence is not optional. You wanted a raise. You got it. This, she gestured to me with a flick of her pen, is what excellence now requires. But it's just a look, isn't it? Clothes? Makeup? She met my eyes then. Her gaze was ice. It's not a look, Madeline. It's a commitment. I felt the word hit like a verdict. That weekend, I sat in the stylist's chair, watching as layers of my former self fell away. The stylist, male, cheerful, and disturbingly excited, held up a mirror after hours of work. There, he said proudly. You're not just passing, you're owning. My reflection didn't look confused or embarrassed. It looked poised, feminine, almost serene. And for a terrifying moment, I didn't recognize myself. But worse, I didn't want to, because part of me liked her. The secretary, the softness, the sense of purpose and submission. Sunday night, I got a final text from Ms. Delacroix. You begin full protocol Monday. Be early. Hair curled. Smile ready. I read it over and over. Then slowly, deliberately, I opened my closet, moved my old clothes, jeans, sneakers, button-ups to one side, and hung the pencil skirts, the silk blouses, the delicate lace underwear where they'd be easy to reach. Somewhere deep inside me, a small voice whispered, "You just wanted a raise, but now you belong to her schedule, her standards, her world. And worst of all, you might be starting to want it too." Monday morning came too quickly. The moment I stepped into the elevator, everything felt different. My blouse clung delicately to my frame, my padded bra subtly rounding out my silhouette. A soft breeze stirred my skirt just enough to remind me what I was wearing and that I had no backup outfit hidden in my bag. Miss Delacroix had seen to that. She was waiting in the lobby. "You're 4 minutes early." "Good," she said, barely glancing at me. "Today we begin phase 2. Phase 2. I echoed nervously, my heels clicking on the marble as I followed her through the atrium. She gave a tight smile. "You've been visually adjusted. Now we begin behavioral reconditioning." I blinked. Behavioral? We reached the executive wing, and she turned sharply. "You'll speak less. Smile more. Posture. Straight, shoulders back, hands folded and less typing. And we never question assignments, only fulfill them with grace." I swallowed. "Yes, Ms. Delacroix." "Good girl." Those 2 words hit harder than I expected. The desk no longer felt like mine. My computer had been replaced with a newer model, sleek, white, and covered in soft pink accessories. A nameplate now read, "Madeline Parks, Executive Assistant," in elegant, looping cursive. A hand mirror sat beside a bottle of rosewater toner. And, taped to the screen, a note. "Beauty is part of your job now. M.D." I was answering calls in a higher-pitched voice within an hour. By noon, I found myself adjusting my lipstick in the bathroom mirror between meetings. Each time I looked up, Madeline stared back at me. Less hesitantly, more obediently. The other assistants noticed, of course. "Oh, honey," said Lydia, the redhead from HR, eyeing my figure. "You're really in her program, huh?" I nodded cautiously. "I guess I am." "You're lucky," she whispered. "Miss Delacroix only chooses the ones she sees something in. Potential. Malleability. You must have really impressed her." I didn't know whether to feel proud or alarmed. Later that day, I received a mysterious package marked for Mad in glittery letters. Inside, nude stockings, a more form-fitting blouse, a pale pink spiral-bound notebook titled Grace Notes, and a collar. Not a choker, not jewelry, an actual collar, with a soft velvet interior and a little gold tag. Property of MD. My hands shook as I closed the box. Then I read the note tucked beneath it. "You're progressing. Soon, you'll be perfect. Protocol 2B begins tomorrow. Wear everything. MD." I stared at my reflection the next morning, trying to steady my breath. The collar sat around my neck, soft, snug, inescapably feminine. My blouse clung tighter than yesterday's, the satin fabric highlighting my chest's contours thanks to the padded bra I now wore without question. The pale pink skirt barely reached mid-thigh, with stockings hugging my legs and heels that forced my hips to sway with every step. Even I had to admit, I looked nothing like the man who had nervously asked for a raise just days ago. My phone buzzed. "MD, in the elevator yet? I hope you practiced smiling." I hadn't, but I smiled anyway. When I reached her office, Miss Delacroix didn't greet me. Instead, she circled me. Her eyes studied every detail. The contouring I had applied using the makeup tutorial she'd sent. The way I stood, heels close, posture proper. The blush she insisted I now wear daily. She gently touched the collar. "It suits you." I nodded, unsure if I was supposed to thank her. "Speak." "Thank you, Ms. Delacroix," I said softly. "Better. But your tone still lacks warmth. Remember, you're not a man anymore. At least not here. You're my secretary. That means charm, softness, subservience. Is that clear?" "Yes, Ms. Delacroix." Her smile sharpened. Throughout the day, she tested me. She handed me a stack of folders. "Organize these. Alphabetically. then color code them by department. She pressed a lipstick into my hand. Reapply. Every hour. I want that pout flawless. She summoned me over the intercom just to whisper, smile wider. You look tired. By mid-afternoon, I wasn't just complying, I was anticipating. I straightened before she asked. I giggled lightly when she teased my new name. I said things like, let me fix that for you, ma'am, and would you like more coffee, Ms. Delacroix? Each time she smiled, I felt like I had passed a test. At 3 p.m., she handed me a new assignment. Take dictation, she said, sitting at her desk with a commanding posture. I obediently knelt beside her chair per her gesture and opened my Grace Notes notebook. You'll write every word I say, she continued. In cursive. In pink ink. I obeyed. A good secretary is polished, pleasant, and perfectly obedient. She does not question. She does not correct. She exists to reflect the excellence of her boss. My pen moved across the page, my hand shaking slightly. Then she looked down and added, and once reshaped, she is never allowed to return to what she was. My breath caught. I looked up at her, but she only said, smudge that last word, and we'll start over. That night, I lay in bed, notebook beside me. My legs were freshly shaved. Ms. Delacroix had ordered hair removal cream delivered to my desk. My hands smelled of her lavender-scented lotion. I didn't recognize my voice anymore when I whispered, good night. And as I closed my eyes, her words echoed. Once reshaped, never return. The next morning, something had changed. The moment I stepped into the office, every pair of eyes turned. At first, I thought I had spilled something or forgotten part of my outfit. But when I caught my reflection in the glass-bright pink blouse, glossy lips, pearl clip in my hair, I realized what they were reacting to. They saw her secretary. Not a joke. Not a phase. Just me. Looking sharp today, whispered Jeremy from accounting, clearly trying not to laugh. I tried to ignore him. I focused on my steps, heel, toe, sway. My skirt swished with every motion, a constant reminder that there was no going back. Then I caught something even worse. People weren't laughing anymore. They were smiling, nodding, accepting. And somehow, that was even more terrifying. Ms. Delacroix had arranged everything. That day, I had to personally deliver printed memos to every department. I tried to convince myself it was ordinary secretarial work. But the paper was pink. My pen had feathers. And each memo was addressed from Ms. Grace, Executive Secretary, to Ms. Delacroix. The name printed beneath my photo ID badge. My old name erased. In the HR office, I nearly broke. Karen, the receptionist, looked up as I entered and gave me the warmest smile. Grace, right? I've been hearing about you. That lipstick shade is perfect on you. I froze. She saw nothing wrong. She thought this was me. I handed her the memo with trembling fingers. Thank you. Karen tilted her head. Don't be shy. You're doing great. We needed someone like you. Ms. Delacroix's standards are crazy high, but you've got that secretary polish. She meant it as a compliment. But I walked out feeling like a mirror had shattered inside me. Back upstairs, Ms. Delacroix was waiting. Well, she asked, lounging in her chair with a smug arch to her eyebrow. Did everyone address you properly? I nodded. Yes, Ms. Delacroix. No one questioned it? No. Do you know what that means? I hesitated. She stood up, walked to me, and gently ran a manicured nail under my chin. It means this version of you is now reality, Grace. She turned and sat again. You don't even need me to enforce it anymore. The world's already accepted you. So why fight it? That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my secretary blouse, skirt bunched awkwardly at my thighs. I hadn't bothered to take off my heels. I scrolled through photos I'd never have dreamed of posting, but now lived on my company profile. Meet Ms. Delacroix's new secretary, Grace. One had over 300 likes. Another a comment from someone I didn't know. She looks like she was made for this. My old life was fading, and no one, even me, was stopping it. I thought I'd adjusted. I thought the worst was over. But Ms. Delacroix had been waiting for that exact moment when I was just comfortable enough to twist the knife deeper. It started with a calendar invite. Subject line: Secretary Grace's Internal Retraining Program. Phase 2. Mandatory. One-on-one. Conference Room 6C. I arrived early, nerves fluttering. I wore the regulation blush blouse and cream pencil skirt, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't dare do otherwise. When she walked in, she was holding something that didn't belong in any workplace. A pink binder. She set it down like a sacred text. "This," she said, "is your new rulebook." I flipped it open. Each page was handwritten in looping, elegant script. Rule number 1. Grace does not question. Rule number 2. Grace never uses her old name, even internally. Rule number 3. Grace must request permission to change or remove any feminine item of clothing. Rule number 4. Grace maintains a feminine voice at all times, even outside work. I swallowed hard. "This is insane," I whispered. She leaned forward. "No. It's structure. And you floundering, soft, scared little Grace needs structure." She turned the page. Rule number 5. Grace must keep a daily appearance log with photos. Rule number 6. Grace must respond to compliments with, "Thank you. I try my best to stay pretty." My throat tightened. "You expect me to actually?" Her eyes glinted. "I expect you to flourish. You're almost there. These rules will finish the job." That evening, I sat at my vanity. Yes, my vanity. She'd ordered it sent to my apartment. I stared at the reflection. Blush high on my cheeks. Eyeliner sharp. Glossy lips parted in silent disbelief. Then I picked up the pen and began to write in the binder she'd given me. Today's look: pearl earrings, soft curls, light pink cardigan with pleated skirt. Complimented twice, once by janitor, once by supervisor. Voice stayed soft. Only slipped once while laughing. Must improve. I paused. And I added, almost against my will, "Grace is trying." The next day, she tested me. In the elevator, 3 executives stepped in. She looked directly at me and said, "Don't you love how Grace always looks so polished?" I knew what to do. I smiled and replied, "Thank you. I try my best to stay pretty." One of the men nodded in approval. The others didn't even blink. No one questioned it, and I hated how easy it had become to obey. By the end of the week, I was setting my alarm an hour earlier just to curl my hair. I no longer asked myself what I wanted to wear. I opened the wardrobe she had filled and selected the right option. I didn't argue. I didn't rebel. Because I knew rule number 1, Grace does not question. And I was Grace now. I thought I'd reached the peak of her plan. But the gala proved I was only at the edge. The morning of the Delacroix annual corporate gala, she didn't just send an outfit. She sent 3. Each one was boxed in satin tissue, sealed with a handwritten card that read, "Grace, tonight determines everything. Choose wisely. But remember, I already know which one you'll pick." MD. Box 1. A modest black cocktail dress. Sensible. Respectful. Box 2. A sleek navy sheath dress. Chic. Elegant. Still safe. Box 3 was pink. Satin. Off the shoulder. Cinched waist. Flowing skirt. It looked like something a princess or a plaything would wear. I stood frozen. And hours later, in front of my hallway mirror, I was zipping up the pink dress. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and crystal glasses. Every executive was there. I entered behind Ms. Delacroix, walking 2 steps behind, as instructed. I felt their stares before I saw them. Whispers. Double takes. But no one said my name, because they all knew me now as Grace. Ms. Delacroix clinked her glass. "Everyone," she said, voice ringing out, "this is Grace, my most loyal, elegant, and obedient secretary." My knees almost gave out. Applause followed. Actual applause. Later, in a quiet corner, I hissed, "What is this? A circus? You paraded me around like a trophy." She leaned in, eyes cold. "No." I introduced the future. I blinked. "Future? You're not a joke, Grace. You're my success story. My project. My vision. Do you know how many executives asked if you were full-time now? If you'd be attending leadership training? I stared at her. Leadership? Like this? In heels, lashes, and a voice so soft it trembled when I was nervous? But I'm not. I'm not even. You're becoming, she said. And becoming takes sacrifice. The rest of the night blurred. A finance director called me darling. An investor asked if I'd consider being the face of a new diversity campaign. I smiled. I laughed politely. I played along. Because I didn't know what else to do. But when I got home, I didn't undress. I stood in front of a mirror. The pink satin shimmered. My lipstick still perfect. The earrings caught the light like they were laughing at me. And I whispered to my reflection, "What am I becoming?" The reflection didn't answer. But Grace smiled back.